Hello, my name is Adrian Nestor. I'm chairman of the Save the Romaji Adobe Association, and we've been in existence since 2001. And what I'd like to do today is tell you more about the Romaji family that lived and raised their 6 children in the home that we're trying to restore. And if I could, I'd like to take you through a pictorial history of James Romaji coming from Romaji, Italy, which the village is named after his family. He was 21 years old at the time. He could not read or write, and he made his way to New York City, originally thinking he wanted to go to Brazil. But then when he heard about all the gold in California, he came around the Horn, working his way as an assistant cook to get to California. While he was in New York, he ran out of money, and so in order to foster more cash for his trip, he rented a monkey and a grinder and used that in the streets of New York City to get enough money to come around the Horn. When he came to Angels Camp, somehow he went out to Albany Flats and he picked up $1,000 worth of gold nuggets in a relatively short period of time. Then he took that money over to Malonis, which was a city at that time, and he purchased a mine that people were trying to do something with but had not been profitable up to that point. After he took it over, he ended up with $30,000 or $40,000 in less than a month. In today's money, that's $777,000. So here was a 24-year-old man, stonemason by trade, in Angels Camp with $1 million. So what he decided to do was to build a home before he returned to Romaji, Italy, to bring back his bride, who was Luisa Fopiano. So he started building the home, picking up the rock from the local fields, and made the home in Angels in Albany Flat. This is a map showing the village of Romaji, where he came from in Genoa, and someday I hope to visit there and get more details about the family. This is a family member that still lives in the home that's over 200 years old, built exactly like the one he built in Albany Flat. Around the Horn with him, he brought a ironstone ravioli platter that we have located in Canada. This is a picture of he and Luisa. He went back to Italy and brought her over. Her name was Luisa Fopiano, and this shows them in front of the home and the store. He turned this home into a store, a bar, a card room, and a stagecoach stop, and that was his business. And these pictures shows Luisa Fopiano Romaji as she aged during her lifetime. And this shows her with her son Peter and a granddaughter, Eva Gazzola. It was very interesting. Of the 6 children, they only married into 3 families: the Gazzolas, the DiMartinis, and the Piranos. So here we see the Gazzola family, and this was Gio Gazzola and Jane Marie Gazzola and their children. The 2 sisters married 2 brothers, Gazzolas. And this shows a house where Gio Gazzola lived in Angels Camp, and you can still see it as you go past the bridge, and right at the top of that little rise, it's on the right-hand side with the concrete post. And this, of course, is some more of the family members. This is Carmen Caton, and she still lives in Twainhart, and she's been very helpful in putting all this information together that I'm showing you today. Then the DiMartinis, Columba Romaji married a DiMartini. Picture shows Columba Romaji and Paul DiMartini, the second family that the girls married into, and this picture shows their children. Once you get into this searching into family records, then anytime you see their name, you do a follow-up to see if you can find more descendants. This is a DiMartini that owns an RV business up in Grass Valley, and he is a cousin. This is a DiMartini in Modesto, who is a politician. I haven't tracked that down yet. And of course, this is Mrs. Johanna DiMartini in Angels Camp when she celebrated her 100th birthday. This is what the area looked like after he bought a 100-acre quartz claim in Albany Flat. And in my slide presentation, I take this and blow it up individually. There's actually a little girl in the window here. There is a boy riding a pony towards Sonora. There are 2 adults in the garden area, 2 adults on the other side of the fence, and of course some children up here playing on the hill. We thought they were Indians at first, but it turns out they have little jonipers like kids wore those days to the schoolyard. In the hot summer days, they built an extra lean-to at the back of the house so that she could cook outside as opposed to cooking inside the building. And this is what the building looks like today. James became a citizen of the United States of America on September the 10th in 1860, and we have that original paperwork. This is the list of the descendants that we know about in the family tree, and all the ones with the green circles here indicate that I have met them, and we have located 16 descendants now that attended our fundraiser dinner in September 2006. And here are all the names of the families that are involved in the chain of the family tree, and each mark indicates somebody that I have had contact with. James took his family back to Italy, and in those days you had to get approval from the king. So here it says, in the name of His Majesty Vittorio Emanuele II, the Minister of Foreign Affairs gives him a passport for everybody to take care of their needs and assistance, and it was good for 1 year. At the same time, I have the transcript here from the New York passenger list of 1877 showing that James Ramaggi and Louisa was 36 at the time, Maria was 15, Angela 10, Colombo 8, and Carmen 1. And this is the baptism of Andrew, their second son, in 1888. And here are some death notices of the other family members as they passed away. This was in the Sacramento Bee on July the 19th, 1941. It was a full-page spread. And that was when Mr. Wiltsey bought the property. He was the second vice president of the California Historical Society, and he purchased this property and a cricker store up in Point Wine, which is near Quincy, and was going to restore them. I have 3 of his books that he wrote at that time, basically doing with transportation in the gold country. Now, there was only one accident in the bar all that time, and it was between a Miller and a Tarbert. And I actually have here the inquest and the jury trial when Tarbert shot Miller after Miller had stabbed him. And they were both competed for the road clearing job from Angels Camp to Carson Hill. Tarbert won and Miller lost. When Miller came by, Tarbert called him a buffer. And I looked that word up and what it means. It's he's soft in the belly, or it means that you're not very smart. Well, Miller told Tarbert that at least he could read, and at that point Tarbert slapped him, and he wasn't aware of the fact that Miller had a knife in his pocket. So Miller pulled out the knife, stabbed him in the ribs, didn't do much damage. Tarbert pulled out the pistol, shot Miller. They put him in the wheelbarrow that he was pushing, brought him into Angels Camp, and the constable declared him dead. And then they did have an inquest, and I have copies of it here, and 2 of the men that were witnesses had to use their mark because they couldn't read or write. Also, the one thing that Mr. Ramaggi did during his lifetime is he dug what they call the Italian ditch, and it was somewhere above Murphy's to Albany Flat, and when she passed away in 1917, she paid $58 taxes on the Italian ditch, so they still owned it at that time. When he was in New York City, even though he didn't have much money, he bought a $10 gold piece. And it was minted in New Orleans in 1848. And as you know, when you had to turn in your gold, when Roosevelt put everything in Fort Knox, Romeo Ramaggi, who was living up in Bremerton, Washington at the time, took that down to the IRS, and they decided because it didn't have e pluribus unum on the coin, it didn't have to be turned in. I have located that in Vallejo, California, and we hope to put that in the museum when we open it up. Now, at that time, in 1882 to 1888, Albany Flat had 2 trading posts, a Roman Catholic church, Good Temperance, Sons of Temperance, a hotel, and numerous gambling spots. One of the interesting stories here that Romeo told is that he had his older son, he gave him 10 cents to clear out 100 feet of the Italian ditch. He turned around and had his brother do it for 5 cents for 100 feet, and he kept the other nickel. And the grandfather was very happy over that he had that kind of business acumen to do that. This is the other family, the Piranos, and this is Carmelo Ramaggi and Augustine Pirano at their marriage. And I've located Nick in McMinnville, Oregon, and he has Nick's Italian Cafe, and he still serves Ramaggi minestrone soup and Ramaggi ravioli. And over here, just to give you an idea how involved it is once you get into searching these family records, These are just a couple of sheets from my work day when I tried to find out about a Mr. Libby who was in England, and he was supposed to start to write a book about the Ramaji family. So obviously I wanted to try to get his research. So I started off with Joyce Richards, which lives in Stockton. She sent me over to Frances Libby, who lives in Sonora. She referred me to Valerie Roundtree, which is a relative that lives in Oregon. And then they came back to Judy Sarah in Sonora, and finally to Kenneth Libby back over in Sonora. This is a picture of Mary Dixie. She was a Miwok Indian, and she helped Mrs. Ramaji with all of her children, doing the laundry and other odd jobs. And she made these baskets for her, and they were given to the daughter of Louisa Ramaji, and she gave them to Carmen Caton, and she has them in Twain Harte today. If you stop by the building, you will see in the front side here some roots from this old rose bush still growing out of the front. And those rose bushes were imported from Italy specifically for that home. And of course, the home has always been a draw for artists. There are many, many paintings in the local area of the Ramaji home. If there's anybody that would be interested in trying to help do more research on the Ramaji family, or they are related to any of the people that you see here, Pirano, Roleri, Cowden, Raspberry, DeMartini, Emerald, Bodoni, Phillipson, Mott, Jackson, Fuhr, Richards, Podesta, Gazzola, Beyer, Flagg, Lewis, Matson, Taylor, Honey, Medier, Caton, Thrower, Libby, Ferreira, French, Orme, Lehman, and Kishami, please let me know, and I would like to include those information, particularly if you have pictures. And this display will be on hand at the Italian Heritage Days. I believe it's on May the 3rd down at the museum, so you can stop by and maybe give me some pointers or give me some additional information. This is an architectural rendering of what we hope the Ramaji Adobe Gold Country Museum will look like when it's finished. We have a parking area here toward the Sonora area. We have some garden area that we want to replicate like he had originally down in front of the building where the new highway is now. And then we want to try to replicate with school children the fruit orchards that occupied his 100-acre quartz claim. And then over on this side, we want to have our ADA access area and also a picnic area. And on the inside, we want to replicate it as close as we can to the original store and bar. The store was on the right-hand side. It was very limited, just had minor supplies and fruits and vegetables and wine. And then here was the bar on the back wall. And then, of course, we're going to put our display areas in the center. And all 6 children were raised upstairs. They did add a wooden addition later on, and we don't know exactly what year. And that had 2 bedrooms, a parlor, and a kitchen. Our aim here is to try to have younger people get interested in doing genealogy about their grandparents and their parents and their great-grandparents before they get too old, which is relatively typical. So in the museum, what you will have is you will have these large placards that are about 2.5 feet wide by 4 feet tall, and each one will represent a family. Just like I did for the Ramajis, it will show the matriarch and the patriarch and all the children's children with a story of what they did. Because even though a lot of people came for the gold, as we all know, eventually they decided to become merchants, blacksmiths, run a stable, do something other than actually paying for gold. The other thing we'd like to have in the museum is a computer program where we can have small children sit down and put in their great-grandparents' name, and then maybe we will give with the parents as they leave a form to fill out and mail back to us that will tell us whether they ask continuing questions on the way home or in the next 2 weeks. And if the answers come back yes, then we have been successful in our attempt to try to get young children more interested, or younger people more interested in genealogy before it's too late. In my case, my mother and father are gone, and my aunts and uncles. I have one aunt left on either side, and I know it's going to sound silly, but I have no idea how my parents met. I should have talked to them because I lived at home until I went to college, but we just don't think of those things until it gets too late. Thank you very much for your attention.